when you're on, you want to be on. And when you're off, you want to be off. The problem is our Western civilization, I mean, kind of the whole world now, for the most part, we take medication to try to stay on. We try to take medication to try to stay off. And it's like we live in this limbo land. No, man, I want to wake up and be like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to like, no, I'm done. My body, I feel my body naturally shutting off, et cetera. So when you're able to modulate the resources that your body's lacking, and then when you take it to the next level and use properly peptides to manipulate the epigenome, that's ultimately where I see like, hey, you're starting to have a better human experience, right?
I have always been incredibly interested in optimizing my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual performance. And this is one of the reasons why I started on it. But that quest has continued, a quest that has brought me to explore hormone optimization and most recently, fertility optimization, which is something that we talk about on this podcast with Dr. D, the CEO of an organization called Biohax that is on the cutting edge of all of the peptides and different longevity and performance treatments that are available today. We have a fun conversation that goes a bit into my own medical challenges and path to optimization, as well as what's available in the market in general and how medicine can and will be practiced in the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So enjoy this podcast with Dr. D. Dr. D.
What's up, my brother?
Here we are, my
me,
man. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're here in Miami. This is your hometown.
Yes, sir.
But I didn't meet you here. I met you when I was out at Jake Paul's fight out in Arizona and didn't have any ideas about potentially meeting somebody who could help manage my health. But we ended up riding in cars together as we were going to and from the fight to support Jake in that fight against Anderson Silva. And I started to get to talking with you. And what I saw was a medical mind that actually saw beyond just what the conventional medical model sees and started to see the patient really, like who the person really is, what the energy was all about, how the heart plays into it, and has all the knowledge about the hormones and the peptides and everything. And I was like, damn, this might be my guy. This might be my guy.
Yeah, right there.
So with that, after that happened in that moment when I recognized that, hit you up and obviously you're the CEO of Biohax?
Yeah.
CEO of Biohax. And I got with you and your team and we did a bunch of tests. You made it really easy and looked at all my blood and we started to kick it off. So I wanted to use this as an opportunity to share with my audience both some of the things that have worked with me, some of the mistakes that I may have made, some of the things that I wasn't aware of as I've been working with different doctors,
right?
And just kind of share really a story of, in many ways, performance health, fertility health, and male hormonal health in an interesting way. And we haven't got to talk about that, so. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Brother, so honored. Such a pleasure to be here. And I remember that car ride. With a lot of sirens next to us. We're getting escorted in.
That was pretty cool. We got like a police escort.
Yeah. And you said the fight now, and I couldn't even remember which, like for a second you said Anderson Silva. I was like, oh yeah, because been through that with Jake a few times. And, that kid's a very special kid. He's doing really good work.
He really is.
Yeah, he's a special guy.
He's a special guy, and I think people don't actually understand. They only see a sliver of the guy that I think you and I get to see.
I'm gonna say something from the bottom of my heart. He's one of the top humans I admire right now. Like from getting to know him and seeing him in these last 2 years that I've been with him and seeing his growth. I mean, God bless him. He's such a good person. But yeah, in that conversation, I remember Lucas introduced us, right?
Yeah, so Lucas Mack and Ella Weston were also there supporting Jake Paul, and this is all this whole kind of.
He comes up.
Jake's got his fucking.
Entourage.
He's got a badass entourage rolling with him,
and he's like, I think I was talking to Jake's coaches. He's like, oh, there's somebody you got to meet, bro. You and him are gonna vibe because you both are like zzz. I'm like, okay, and then I walked up to you, and then one thing I'll tell you, your energy immediately like. I walked in this room, I was commenting on somebody's energy here too. Like that's something I'm trying to learn how to pay more attention to. And just right here, just me saying this already does not play any role in traditional medicine. Like just me talking about this and
energy. What are you talking about?
He has an MD, which I have a doctorate in medicine, and I went to school for this and did postdoc work and research and metabolism and so forth. So I was in that model, definitely dressed with a button up every day and walking around. I
wore the costume.
Yeah, wore the costume. Last hospital I worked at was at the Cleveland Clinic here in
now
Boston.
Apparently the costume is sleeveless with a hoodie. Which is rare. We both ran into each other and was like, what are the chances that we're both wearing sleeveless with a hoodie? But
and
whatever it is, it would have been more insincere if we changed, just so it didn't look like we planned it. But this is actually our humility showing that, oh yeah, we're being twinsies right now.
Absolutely. And I believe, again, going back to energy and so forth, there's something there. There's something in the ether.
This is a sleeveless hoodie podcast. That's what we're talking about.
There you go. But so discussing energy and so forth, you and I in that car ride, I think opened doors to our connection and just, my role in your life and other people's lives, I think, is to be a little bit of a beacon of hope and of light, just to understand what's going on this planet. Because I dedicate my time to studying this stuff. Like even today, I was talking to, I think he's the next Elon Musk of the biotech space. His name's Ryan Smith, very, very good friend of mine. He owns True H Diagnostics, the company that does the epigenetic testing, which according to him, apparently we have the largest database of epigenetic information in the world right now, us at Biohax. So I was like, okay, I didn't know that. He told me that last week. So, but just talking to him, he was telling me about the imprintome. And the imprintome is basically how it's epigenetic generational transitioning from, not from you to your kids, but from your parents to your kids. See, and that my role, I know, I just saw on your face, like, yeah, that's crazy.
So,
what they ate will influence your kids.
So the grandmother generation.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts. And this is like all brand new stuff.
So
like
2 generations.
Yeah. And then I feel like my job is to take these things that, are never, not never, but are going to take a long time to be recognized by traditional medicine and by traditional medical models. And I understand, because there's, you want to be cautious in what you're approving out there to be said, and different medications and what's FDA approved and what's not. But the role too is to guide people along their health with the most cutting edge things, but also the sacred sciences of our planet Earth, which we're veering totally off with all this chemical engineering that we're surrounding ourselves with and making us toxic. And I really believe it's disrupting our connection with our higher self and our maker. Yeah. So it's much more than just like, oh, here, take your stuff.
Yeah.
Something deeper, man.
This is you called it the imprintome?
Yeah, it's nuts, man.
It's really interesting, because what you're talking about is healing generational trauma. And that's a complicated thing to think about. And I didn't plan on talking about this on the podcast, but in the psychedelic medicine world, of course, you experience that. You experience things that pass down from the lineage, either your, paternal lineage, your maternal lineage, things that have happened in your line. You certainly feel like you get the opportunity to work with that on a spiritual level. But what you're saying is that there's actually epigenetic triggers that are happening. And so, just for a moment, to just have some compassion and sympathy that people are suffering the wounds and traumas that their parents and their grandparents suffered. And, I'm Jewish, and, my parents escaped from Russia. Not my parents, but my great-great-great-grandparents escaped from Russia during the pogroms. So, and they were being persecuted by the Russians. I was Jewish. Right. But so that's a couple generations away. So I haven't really felt that necessarily in my own field. But now as we get closer, we're talking about Jews who have had their grandparents go through the Holocaust. We're talking about people of color who have been, subject to just ridiculous amounts of racism and the sexism that's occurred, and also the just personal trauma, sexual trauma, all of this stuff. There's so much that comes from our ancestors. And just like the compassion is, we're so quick to judge people, and like, oh, I can't believe this person is like that. Wow. Well, you don't even know what they're carrying, not only from a spiritual standpoint, but actually from an epigenetic standpoint. They may be carrying a lot.
Yes.
A lot. So just everybody, like, let's give a little bit of grace to everybody else out there, knowing that there's a lot that we all have to deal with.
Absolutely. And what you're saying on the epigenetic side, and just, I guess, for listeners to maybe get a bigger grasp of what it is, because the word epigenetic, whatever, just a 2-minute on what the epigenetic is, or epigenome is. Back in the year 2001, we wanted to calculate the human genome to really understand how many genes, et cetera, was inside the human. And I think everybody remembers the Human Genome Project, right? And then, let me see if I remember this off the top of my head. We were estimating the humans to have about 1 billion genes, 1 billion, right? But we saw, we did this by extrapolation. We saw that a grain of rice had 52,000 genes. Okay. Mosquito, if I'm not mistaken, 100 and something thousand genes, 172,000 genes, something like that.
They need to change that one motherfucking gene that tells the mosquitoes to bite me first. Because that motherfucker is in there and it's creating my own generational trauma.
Bro, mosquitoes
around
are
mosquitoes
attached to you, bro. Like, mosquitoes love me, bro. They'll eat me alive.
Maybe it's because we're putting good peptides in
I know. No, there's something there, man. There's something there. And but check this out. So remember, a grain of rice, 52,000 genes. You know how many genes are inside of a human? 23,000 genes. Half of the grain of rice. Half of the grain of rice. It's crazy. So it's like, wait a minute. So that's what epigenetics is. It's not, you're not totally made up by
we
genes.
thought there was going to be 1 billion.
But there's only 23,000.
It actually turns out there's 23,000, which is less than actually some of the more simple organisms that exist. And what you're saying is the reason is because epigenetics is like it's almost like quantum computing, where things can switch on and off and change the code of the genes.
So now bringing it back to what you were saying on the trauma and so forth, and I hope some of our listeners have their jaw dropped, because I still remember when I first learned this, I'm like, wait, hold on. We have half the genes of pretty much of a grain of rice. So it's like, okay, so what makes this like beautiful complexity of this organism in front of me called Aubrey Marcus, right? Like, how is he functioning as, I thought it was the complexity of his DNA, which indeed, yes, that's true. But so what epigenetics is epi means over, right? So epigenetics is your environment, your whole lifestyle, everything is impacting your DNA and thus your gene expression. You're not altering your genes, but your gene expression is really what's at play, being influenced. And now we have this imprintome idea, being influenced and by your past, and also gives us hope that we can actually make changes, chemical changes, biochemical changes, which I believe in and live by. And I'm not saying pharmaceutical changes, I'm saying biochemical changes, bringing your framework, your biochemical framework back to how you're designed or how you were made to operate. And then thus improving your epigenome and hopefully improving your human experience.
Yeah. Amen. And one of the things that's, talking about the blueprint of who we are, when I was 36, I found that I was getting depressed. It was difficult. Like, I'd always loved working out. I've been working out my whole life. I've been an athlete my whole life. I didn't want to go to the gym anymore. I couldn't recover quite right. And I was like, something's off. So I went and got my blood drawn and got my hormones checked. And what they saw was sex hormone binding globulin was through the roof. And of course, I was right in the middle of, the founding and being the CEO of On It, and in a polyamorous relationship and a lot of things. So my stress level was extraordinarily high. And what the doctor explained to me at that point is that stress and sex hormone binding globulin, which, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but it soaks up the free available testosterone that you have in your body.
Absolutely.
So not only was my testosterone low, which I think has a lot of other environmental causes, the kind of estrogenic world that we live in from all the plastics and all the things that we do, but also because of my sex hormone binding globulin being so high, I had almost like very, very little actual testosterone available. So I got on testosterone replacement therapy then. And I don't talk about my own health that much, but I really feel like now, because now that I'm with Vylana and I got, started working with biohacks to actually figure things out, I wanted to share it because, so starting at 36, I got on testosterone replacement therapy, and fucking A. Fucking A. It was like better living through science. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. I'm back, baby.
Yeah.
I'm fucking back. And I think people don't understand testosterone, first of all. I think they think of it like, oh, it's all about, macho. And it was like so much more about how my brain was working. Like I felt like I was me again. Right. Like the world was all difficult and hard. And then all of a sudden, I started replacing some of the hormones that I was no longer producing or was getting absorbed by my sex hormone binding globulin. And it was like, oh, I got this. I got this. We're good. We're good. Everybody, hey, I'm going to call a meeting. I want to let everybody know. We're good. And that's really the effect that it had. And of course, it had physical effects too. It was easier to put on muscle and whatnot, but I was always in great shape, but really, as far as from a psychological perspective, it was a fucking miracle.
Just even before I make some comments here, because a lot of people will say, oh, testosterone replacement therapy, whatever, testosterone causes cancer and so forth. Yeah, it absolutely will cause cancer if it's not bioidentical. If it's not like the one we're properly using. And I say we're because I also use that stuff and a lot more. Everything, the philosophy is to use bioidentical substances which your body is deficient in, doesn't have the resources to produce, because again, a lot of environmental factors are not allowing us to actually produce that. And then you get guys like you, and I'm going to include myself, because I started biohacks, or started understanding the science behind biohacks. I was 30. I was a researcher at Cleveland Clinic and just basically getting diagnosed with depression. And just same thing, went to see my hormone profile and et cetera, no energy, no focus. And I have no shame in saying this. My sex life was like pretty much starting to go out the window. I was with my beautiful wife already. So it was like, what the heck's going on? And same thing. And then once you replace what's missing, okay, not add something different than the body's producing, but replace what's missing, it's a whole new life. I like to joke around. I say it's the hustler serum. That's where it's like, you're like, bro, I got this. Your vitality, mood, energy, focus, concentration gets better. And I'll even give you an example. I see this in the company all the time. Mrs. Smith brings Mr. Smith, right? And she's like, oh my God, he's so grumpy, da-da-da-da-da. And she's, 78, he's 82 or something like that. And then all of a sudden, he's never done any hormonal replacement therapy or anything like that. You give him a little bit of testosterone cream or something like that, he perks up. He starts to feel better. Even spatial recognition improves. If you start talking to the person lots of time, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not losing myself so much. Or I'm not going from the bathroom to the kitchen. I'm like, oh, what am I doing here again? That starts to improve. And it's not only about those like physical gains, et cetera. So I'm totally with you, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we live in a world in a way that's not like our ancestors lived. Like we're an animal. We're a primal, savage primate. And we're not living the life of a primal, savage primate. No. We're not in a tribe. We're not connected with the oxytocin of always being linked with our brothers and our wives and our children and, hunting and out in nature and long periods of just parasympathetic rest and then short bursts of intensity in a hunt or in a fight or something. We're not living that life. We're mostly just wired all the time, trying to accomplish and do and create companies and build stuff. And it's beautiful. I love our current life. I'm not trying to say that I would like to romanticize and go back and regress, to our ancestors. Maybe sometimes I wish I could, but ultimately I do love our life, but the lifestyle needs to have an equal countermeasure to actually support us, the animal us,
right,
to be able to function in this kind of unnatural environment for us as animals.
Right. You just mentioned something I always talk about, like before, I'm going to speak very like rudimentary here. We had our little cave we would have those sympathetic rushes, run from a, run from a tiger, like hunt some food, a fight or something like that. And then we would shut off. Nowadays, we don't shut off. We're constantly on. That email comes in, the issues with work and the phone doesn't stop, et cetera. We're constantly on. I mean, our wearables are telling us, right? Constantly. And, I actually have 2 cell phones, man. I every once a year for about a month, I'll disconnect. I'll only use a phone that my assistant, my wife, my mom, dad, an attorney have.
The bat phone.
Yeah. It's like, and I'll disconnect for a bit. And I actually go into deep study and so forth. But what ultimately that does, it leads us to, as humans, into we start to regress chemically really bad, really, really bad. And then on top of that, we're using other agents, on our daily living, like to clean our body, the detergents and soaps and so forth, and that start to hurt us. And then on top of that, to try to fix it, we use medications that are not addressing the biochemistry at all.
Yeah, they're just addressing the symptoms of what we're experiencing. So
exactly.
And rather than the root cause of what we're experiencing, which is toxic buildup from our environmental causes or, depletion of the natural hormonal balance of what we have. And it's funny because like the best person you can possibly be is the person with all of your hormones balanced and flourishing, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like, I think sometimes people think like, oh, testosterone, that's what makes men violent and that's the shadow masculine. It's like, no. This is necessary for any man, the loving father,
absolutely,
the romantic lover, the leader, every good aspect that you ever want. And that's not just in men, it's in women too. Women need testosterone as well, just different amounts.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, like it's a part of every aspect of our life. And that's really what I felt when I first, experienced like replacing the hormones that I had lost. It was like, oh shit, like here I am again. I'm home. And that was a really profound thing. Now, at that point, I didn't have the awareness about how this might affect certain things downstream. And this circles back to the fertility thing. Because one of the things that happens, I was 36 then in a polyamorous relationship. I was not thinking about fertility. In fact, the less fertility, the better.
Right.
At that point. So when you take testosterone, your fertility can actually dry up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to so I was on testosterone, just testosterone for, I guess, 5 years. And then Vailana and I are finally talking about having kids. So I was like, all right, well, let's see what's happening now. I'm pretty sure I'm not producing any sperm at all, but let's check to make sure. Sure enough, go to the sperm bank or whatever, the fertility clinic, and give a donate. Well, actually they let you give a donation at home now, which is like way cooler than having to do it there. Yeah.
It's like, here's a magazine.
and it was literally zero. And this was, right before we went out to the Jake Paul fight. And so when we met, that was one of the things that was on my mind was like, all right, I've had this thing. It's worked really well. I've felt like that one lever, just moving that one lever has significantly up-leveled my life and, brought me back to kind of a normal balanced state. But it's dried up all my fertility. So we got to switch some things around. And that's where, you guys at Biohax started to put together a program for me. And we're just kind of starting that program. But I'm actually surprised at how smooth the transition has been, because I've transitioned pretty much mostly off the testosterone. But I'll pass this over to you here to talk about what happens to fertility when you're on testosterone, like it happened to me. And then what, some of the solutions that we're working with actually look like.
Yeah. So I know it's been pretty smooth, and I heard some of your clothes is fitting a little tighter now. I heard
that. I've actually put on more muscle since getting on the new protocol, which is surprising to me because I'm taking less testosterone.
Exactly. So I wanted to start off there because lots of times the guys are like, why don't they want to get off of testosterone? It's like, because I'm going to wither away. It's like, I'm going to turn, very skinny, whatever. So
and also just a note, like you can't just take testosterone and put on muscle. You got to work out too.
Yeah. Of course,
like,
of course.
like it's not just like, this is not, something like you got to fucking hit it. And, that's what I've been doing my whole life is hitting it hard. And you do that though. And then all of a sudden you start to see like, oh, wow. All right.
You've put what, 12 pounds?
12 pounds on.
12 pounds. And here's the idea. When you're starting to prepare the body or bodies to make a human, which that's sacred, man. That's super, super sacred, right?
I mean, some would say the most sacred.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. I agree with you. I just had our first baby, as you know, 6-month-old, a little Apollo. So yeah, I'm going through that process right now. But so once you start to remove that testosterone, the exogenous testosterone from your body, the idea is to get your body to produce endogenous, your own testosterone. So for example, we had the baby. I never got off.
Because when your body's producing your own testosterone, you're also producing sperm. Somehow those two things are linked. If you're not producing testosterone, then you're not producing sperm. And when you're taking in bioidentical testosterone, your body's fucking smart. Your body recognizes, hey, we got enough testosterone. Let's stop the factories.
Exactly.
We're going to stop the factories. Oh, by the way, the factories also make sperm. And they were like, yeah, all right, shut it all down.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what basically happened. I was getting the testosterone. So the sperm and testosterone factory shut down. And then what you're talking about is these other different hormones that it can actually get the body kickstarted again and say, all right, factory's back in action. We're back making Fords. Let's go. We're making Marcus vehicles again.
So this is my personal science philosophy at Biohax, and by which I designed our, modus operandi. I don't think the guy should be shut off while he's taking the testosterone, to tell you the truth. And lots of it goes into the dosing protocols, okay? Because, the traditional, 200 milligram you see a lot in these clinics, 200 milligram testosterone shot once a week. Yeah, that's going to shut you off because you're going to have that huge peak, right, of testosterone, which when you take that shot, even though like, hey, you're trying to hit a 900, so testosterone goes from 300 to about 1200, depends on the labs. Mm-hmm. Some labs I still see go to 1500, others are coming down to 900, but let's say 1200, I think is the one I see the most. When you take that shot, it's going to go way up there. Mm-hmm. That's not physiologic. My whole goal is to make the body, and I'm going to speak personally, I want my body to react if I was a Spartan living with the Spartans in the Spartans' times, right. I want to have that kind of like physique, that kind of bravado, that kind of manliness that they had at that time naturally. It's not by doing one shot a week and it's going to go peak all the way up there. So one thing that happens when you do those peaks and valleys, that's when you shut off the FSH, LH, the follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone activity that's going to the Leydig cells and the Sertoli cells in the testicles and shuts them off. And then, like you said, it recognizes the testosterone but doesn't produce a sperm. So one of the ways to do it is actually shut off that big peak and valley. You just you do it smaller. So yeah, you'll pin more times, and obviously you don't have to pin. And I've told you that you don't have to pin with those big harpoon looking things. You can pin with small little insulin needles, 3 to 4 times a week, and then in between. With that, you come in with other hormones that will help, other secretagogues that will help your FSH and LH to turn back on, like classically HCG, but there's things like gonadorelin, kisspeptin, and there's even plants like Fedosia agrestis. There's a few things.
Okay, so let's slow down and talk about a couple of these things, because the big switch was I was on, 1 cc of a 200 milligram cypionate, I guess, which was exactly what the testosterone was per week. And I divided it into two shots, but that was still enough to give me the peaks and valleys to shut me off completely. And then we switched over to doing HCG, which was actually going to then allow me to start producing my own testosterone, and then producing my own. And actually, honestly, my balls actually came back as well, right?
Hello.
Because that when they were that's the factory, and when the factory was shut down, the factory was shut down, and so that happened really quite fast. And I kind of expected that to take a while longer, but it felt like, oh, wow. And I haven't gotten my sperm checked again. It's only been about a month since I've been on the HCG. But it feels like, and I look forward to verifying this, it feels like it's quite possible that I might be back on and fertile again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm pretty confident that you are. And even, and this is what we kind of try to do, like, especially for guys that have been on testosterone replacement therapy for quite some time. And every guy is very different, okay? Because it's not, some guys could take a shot of testosterone and their pituitary gonadal axis will act different than another guy. Some guys will take less to shut off, and it's what we call medicine negative feedback, right? So that's very different for most males. But the thing is, what you start to do is squeeze that testosterone protocol and split it up as much as possible, and then concomitantly scale that secretagogue. But we're not only doing that, and something big also that we're doing.
What's the secretagogue?
Secretagogue, so it's a hormone, in this case, that will make your body secrete its own hormone.
So that's the HCG?
That would be the
HCG is a secretagogue.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an expression for those type of hormones that are making your body produce its own.
Okay, got it.
So now, it's not only that activity that we're doing that's also not only not letting you lose the muscle mass, but gain muscle mass, get leaner, where you're feeling your gonads or your testes come back online, et cetera. And then hopefully we're going to have a successful sperm count. But also the other stuff that we're doing, the micronutrients and so forth. I mean, just, for listeners to understand, we're definitely doing something way deeper than just looking at your hormones and taking the testosterone and so forth. I mean, we're doing micronutrients, peptides. We're looking at chemical toxicity.
It's a holistic picture to actually get anywhere near health, and I think that's also one of the big problems with medicine is it gets very myopic. It focuses on one symptom and one chemical solution to that symptom, and sometimes that works great. If you have a staph infection and you take an antibiotic, right? Like it's like, all right. 1-to-1. This is the problem. This is the solution. Fixed it. And perfect. And blessings to allopathic pharmaceutical medicine for having those solutions available.
Absolutely.
Like it's very important. But ultimately, if you don't take in the whole 360 degree, including the energy, including the micronutrients, including the whole function of the system, mindset, every other aspect, you really have no chance at holistic, like full vibrancy, full health.
Right. And there's even, so with certain peptides and things that we're using with you. And the next thing I'd love to, perhaps see you on, which is very also conducive for fertility, is thymus therapy even, which is, I know that's like a big, but the thymus gland, that's so important, not your thyroid, I'm saying thymus gland, right? The, where even the ancients, they just used to tap their thymus,
So where's the thymus? The thymus is in the upper part of the chest?
It's part of the chest. In medical school, first year, a lot of, doctors watching this will probably remember a question that we use. Some medical schools do. You get a little x-ray of a baby's chest and then with a little arrow on an exam, right? And they're asking, what's the structure? And it's pointing to what looks like the heart. And you're like, teacher's giving me a freebie here. And you write heart. Everybody gets it wrong. It's the thymus gland. So the thymus gland's huge when you're born, and it's regulates your immune system. And then as you're dying and involuting, basically, you almost can't even find it when you're older.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's studies now. There's a trial the listeners can pull up. It's called the TRIM trial, which is a study published in Aging Cell that shows how you can actually reverse the aging process. They did nine males, and they were able to reverse their age by 2 years. And TRIM trial stands for thymic regeneration, immunorestoration, and insulin mitigation. So it's not only to provoke the best ambiance for fertility, yes, adjusting the hormone protocols, et cetera, but also preparing the body for such a sacred event, especially the female body. Which is
how do you go about addressing the thymus? What do you feel from both a medical and also a metaphysical perspective about what is the thymus? Like, how do you see it when you see it? If you were going to mythologize it, and also then, talk materialist, reductionist, scientist, doctor, talk both about this. You explained a little bit about where it is and whatnot, but like, give people a sense of like, what is it?
I think it's, I'll start on a personal. I think right now it's like, it's wrong to say this, but I think it's like my favorite organ. It's like
it's all the other organs just lowered their head in shame. All the glands.
Balls, I love you guys.
But you know what? I did my best, and Dr. D still has his favorites, and I don't know what I got to do for him.
I'm sorry.
Well, fucking Thymus over here just shrinking away, and he loves it the most.
Watch my balls shut off tonight with my wife. What'd you say earlier today? No, but no, it's so cool. And we, like in med school, we barely addressed it, right? And what it does, it's programming your T cells and your immune system to defend the body. You have your like Th17 cell. I mean, it gets pretty like technical, but they're releasing these cytokines and tumor necrosis factor alpha and things like that are going to fight the physical triggers of immune response that are coming into the body, which are the chemicals, the excitotoxins, which is a nasty topic, which is like blue 1 and MSGs and all, they're in sweeteners and so forth. Your body's going to use these T cells and what they're going to release to go fight these things. And the thymus gland is the one regulating this whole thing. But the crazy part is, it's like this headquarters of protection that's dying as you're aging, and then eventually, part of death is your immune system being overwhelmed. Now, your thymus gland, as the TRIM trial is showing, is the one that's salvaging that's the one that's helping your immune system to survive. But at the same time, lots of times when you feel that tightness in your chest, like somebody tells you just like something happened, or people will say, yeah, it's your heart, etc. But also, is it not your thymus gland? And also,
yeah, because in those situations of stress, that's when you get sick, right? It's like when you're feeling that compression in your chest and it feels like your heart's closing. Well, if your heart and your thymus are closely located and connected and in that same energy center, right? The energy center of your heart, where you feel things kind of shut down when you get stressed, well, that's when you get sick.
Yeah.
And so it's actually kind of another way to look at why we get sick when we're stressed, or when we're actually in some ways, quote, heartbroken, even though the heart can never be broken. But that everybody knows what I'm talking about, that feeling of just being.
Absolutely. So and just so you know, thymus therapy was first, I was remembering here, I was trying to remember when I think first physician documented treatments with it, Dr. Endelberg in Sweden since 1938. He was using it used it on 50,000 cancer patients. And there's a lot of research in regards to this too. So good for autoimmune, fertility, et cetera, but just basically preparing the body back to being healed. And what I was telling you, like the thymus gland is releasing these cells which those are releasing like interleukin 6, all these cytokines that are going to fight things that are hurting your body. But at the same time, a lot of medications that we take shut off
the thymus.
Not the thymus, but the cytokines that the thymus is releasing. I'll give you an example.
So it's killing the soldiers that are coming out of the factory.
Exactly. So for example, methotrexate shuts off tumor necrosis factor alpha.
What's methotrexate?
So it's a medication for used for rheumatoid arthritis and so forth, like MTX, right? As they call it medicine, whatever. It shuts off that tumor necrosis factor alpha. That is being released, I think, by Th17, which is a cell being released by the thymus gland. Nuts. So as that process is involuting, you lose that ability to fight it. But then at the same time, you're taking medications that are shutting that thing off. So it's like more.
All right. So how do you create a thriving thymus?
So, number one, removal of I use this term a lot, physical triggers of immune response, because immune response, the thymus gland, so you don't want to overwhelm it, right? Actually, before even that, Sometimes I watch where I'm having this conversation with you. I can definitely have this conversation. So let's go to an upper level spiritually. Your mind does not run on reality. Your mind runs on your perception of reality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in that state that you're running from the lion
Mm-hmm.
every day, all day, and you can't shut yourself off, there's so many studies that the adrenal gland goes through the roof, cortisol action goes super high, and literally cortisol like starts to rot your thymus gland.
Mm-hmm.
So the activity of the cortisol and high levels of stress, because what is stress? High levels of cortisol.
Well, the body's preparing to do something that it knows should be acute. And during it, we're always trying to maximize the energy that we have in our body. We have a certain amount of energy. We try to maximize it. All right, there's a stressor. There's something we need to run from. There's something we need to fight for. There's something we must do. All right, well, let's shut down all of the other energy systems, give everything to our adrenal and musculoskeletal energy and ATP. Let's fucking go balls out, hit the nitrous tanks. We got to sprint here.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful and brilliant. Like, thank you, body, for having that fucking intelligence. However, we are just not living a lifestyle where we're actually shutting off, because those situations where short bursts of intensity and long periods of rest, that's not what we're experiencing. We're always on, we're always running, we're always fighting, we're always doing these things. So the cortisol is always high. And with that, all of the immune function and production of the thymus is then getting shut down.
Yeah, exactly. It's and like you said, when you're in this like forebrain, hindbrain kind of mentality or like lifestyle, your body kind of, when it's in like that sympathetic go, your immune system takes a toll, and thus, like you said, you get sick.
Yep.
So that would be the first way, I would say, mindfulness and, just really get in tune with, like, I really like what you said, like long periods of parasympathetic activity and just,
what's an interesting thing to note is, since 2021, like end of 2021, basically all of 2022, the only time I got sick, I got COVID twice, and it wasn't bad, but I got it twice. But typically in a year, I would get colds and a flu, and I would get sick. But actually, since I've started doing my regular ketamine cannabis therapy, really, which is my sacrament, which is my place where I can actually deeply relax. I'm talking like quantum parasympathetic. Like, I'm like so relaxed that I go into these journeys and ask myself, can I let go more? Can I let go more? Can I let go more? Oh yeah, how about more? How about surrender more? And I just go deeper. And it's so restorative that even though people around me and different, Vailana's gotten sick a couple times, and different people who were staying in my house, people sick, I used to always catch things from people. But I have not gotten sick. And I think really the only explanation is that I'm actually giving myself in those experiences the deepest rest possible. And I can feel it happening. I feel this surge of life force, this chi, this energy that floods over my body. And really, I also, because of my own metaphysical and spiritual beliefs, I'm super grateful for those beings, ascended masters, energies, entities, archetypes, or the one source of all that is love, beauty, intelligence of all of the universe. Whatever is pouring through me is happening when I get to that deep state of rest, and I feel restored. And it's been the healthiest I've been from a sickness perspective.
Right.
Period. And the only thing that I can use to explain it is the fact that I'm actually have a practice now that allows me that type of deep rest.
And I'll tell you, from a science guy that likes to make the bridge, and my essence is, I always say the normal isn't our regular life. The normal is the paranormal. So a guy that likes to take that deep dive, I really believe when you do that, most namely, and I don't mean to like have some favoritism for glands again here, but the adrenal gland and the thymus gland, they really reset, man.
Yeah,
you know,
everything gets to just relax and take a nap.
But then now when you come to people like us at Biohacks, so we want to take it up a notch. So
yeah, of course.
So
that's step one, give it some rest.
Yeah.
Basics.
Absolutely.
Basics
It's
101.
just like, figure out a routine, mindfulness, etc. Follow Aubrey Marcus's footsteps. And you'll be fine.
I mean, I can't recommend that you follow my footsteps, but it works fucking really good for me.
I know a lot of people that follow you. They're doing great. Then 2 would be to lower triggers of immune response. So maybe consider walking around your place, get up on that mountain of life and take some inventory on what you're putting into your body, on everything you're consuming, on the chemicals that are around you.
Mm-hmm.
And start with your cleaning products. There's not that many, because the food, everybody's like, oh my God, I like this restaurant, I like this. How do I know? Okay, good. Start with the stuff you're cleaning your body with, right? Your detergents, your soaps, etc. There's so many things that are around us that are hurting our body, our system, and so on and so forth. Foods, right? Foods is another one.
Mm-hmm. And just so people know, like I wrote about it in my book, Own the Day. There's, an incredibly high percentage of what you put on your skin, especially if you put it in your armpits or on your nuts or like on like certain parts of your neck. And, there's certain places where it's actually even higher, but the rates are extraordinarily high, like
Absolutely.
above 80% in a lot of places, which is, so we think like, well, if I'm not eating it, it's not like I'm eating it. Well, you're basically eating 80% of it. So if you wouldn't eat it, and this is what I say in my book, like if you wouldn't eat the stuff you're putting on your skin, don't fucking use it.
True.
Right? Like, cause it's going to get in you anyways. So just because you don't are you just being a little sissy? You don't like the taste? Like, like might as well fucking eat it. Like if you wouldn't do that, think again.
I'm going to take that one from you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll quote you every time.
For sure.
That's really good. Because like, man, the stuff that you put in your body has such a huge influence on your makeup and, just everything about you, right? And that like we do, and what most people don't understand nowadays, we can actually quantify this. There's laboratories. I really like, I don't have any business association with this lab, but I just really like their work. Cyrix Laboratories. I mean, they're the first guys to have they pioneered the leaky gut test in the United States, intestinal permeability. Like these guys are all about understanding, the immune system and the effects of environment on our immune system. So there's awesome labs that you can actually see, okay, I actually have a little bit of an issue with this chemical, this, et cetera. I've had some exposure and it's causing some kind of havoc inside of me. And you can bet your butt, if you see that there, you're going to start to see, then when you do lots of times a hormone panel, it's like, oh, why did that happen? The heck? I'm 28 years old. My testosterone is 300. Yeah, buddy. That's the, in my opinion, one of the pandemics we're having is male testosterone levels are dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. And it's very different from the levels that our grandparents had. We've gone through 2 agricultural revolutions, and the GMOs in the year 2000 and the pesticides in the 70s. So and it's not getting any better. But then going back to the thymus and how to optimize that thymus gland, then that's when once you take inventory on the things that you perhaps can live a cleaner life and save some money too, man. Because like lots of times you'll notice people say, oh, it's so expensive to be healthy. I'm like, no. Take out gluten, take out dairy, and use some clean products, and you just see the difference you're going to see. Even like parents that tell me, oh my God, my kid, I can't get him to sit down. And I don't want to get into this whole topic right now with ADHD, et cetera. I have my reservations with that topic. But just remove those excitotoxins from their life. Get them to stop playing Call of Duty all the time, right? And clean out their diet a little bit. Take out that gluten. Take out, even if you can't afford to do all those tests, et cetera. But the thing is, we do those tests. We were able to map that out and then show the person, okay, these things are harming you. Then once that's done and we help the person to modify that lifestyle, the next thing is, okay, let's look at what the body's missing. And peptides is definitely a topic I always land on because I think it's the future of medicine. Peptide medicine.
So before we get to peptides, I mean, I think, of course, there's the whole micronutrients thing. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that.
I skipped that one.
We don't need to spend a lot of time on micronutrients. We get it. Like the best thing we can do is have, eat the most diverse foods, but even eating the most diverse foods, a lot of times they're not coming from soil. Even if it's organic, doesn't mean that the soil actually has all of the minerals and nutrients that it used to have or that it once had. I mean, you move from a monocropped plot of land and you're like, all right, we're done with the glyphosate, organic, great, but the soil is already fucking destroyed. So we're not getting the same type of nutrition that we are from the animals that eat the grass. Hopefully you're having grass-fed meat. I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah. But we're not getting the same kind of nutrition that we used to get. So taking a look at the nutrients is important. And just to give one study to show people, how effective this is, they did a study on, I think it was paroled kids from a juvenile detention center, and they gave one group just a multivitamin, multi-mineral multivitamin, really cheap. And then they gave the other group nothing, placebo. And then they measured the recidivism rate. Like, would those kids go back to juvenile hall?
Right.
And it was like 40% decrease in the group that just had a fucking multivitamin. So we think that like people are just bad people again. No. Like this is a fucking bad kid. Or maybe he's just malnourished and full of toxins and actually could use a lot of love, a good hug, and maybe a stronger, influence, parental influence. Okay, got it, all that. But just changing the micronutrients themselves, not the macronutrients. We're not talking about protein, fat, carbohydrates. We're talking about just the micronutrients with a basic, I'm sure in the study, it wasn't like the fucking designer vitamin of all time. It was more like a fucking Flintstones vitamin, probably. But nonetheless, like it made a significant difference in behavior that would land them back in juvenile hall.
So the guy, just to significantly back you up, the guy that has, I believe, the largest, he's deceased, database in terms of neuropsychiatric disorders and treating all of them with micronutrients alone. Talk about hardcore schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD, all these things, is William Walsh. He has a great book called Nutrient Power. It's called Nutrient Power, and then the subtitle is Heal Your Biochemistry, Heal Your Brain. It's a powerful, powerful book. Wow. Yeah, it's a bit technical. You'll read one page, like, whoops, let me go back, and because it talks about methylation and different biochemical pathways. But absolutely, micronutrients, are essential for the functioning of the body, the thymus gland, and your mind. And lots of times, you'll see people that, and this is my probably the community that I have the biggest, it is for sure, I have the biggest passion for, is a lot of these homeless people that were like, oh man, get a job and so forth. It's like, no. His brain more than likely is not working right the way it should. And many times it's either chemically induced or, there's a genetic pathway there that's a little off, so yeah, micronutrients. And we don't do the guessing game, as we map out, hey, how much selenium, CoQ10 and vitamin E, all that stuff is in your body, and then readjust that. And then ultimately, this is something, the last step I definitely want to take in terms of diagnostics, not last step in the ends, but one of the next steps I want to take in terms of diagnostics with you is actually map out your DNA to do a proper designer protocol according to certain genetic factors that you might have. So it's lifestyle, environmental, and then the DNA. Because, so for example, one thing when we were talking about hormones, genetically, my DNA, I'm super estrogen dominant.
Yeah. Now, is there one of the reservations I have with, of course, the whole kind of DNA model is just the ultimate faith in the epigenetic model. In my belief that through actually, as Joe Dispenza, who wrote in his book, You Were the Placebo, like through your mind, you can actually trigger different epigenetic switches to change your base DNA. So it's not the kind of life sentence that the fate that people thought it once was, it's in your genes. No, we have the ability to adjust our genes all the time.
Absolutely.
But however, there are some certain baseline aspects of gene expressions that just change things, even with the layer of epigenetics, which I put the most faith in. What you're saying is basically it's still worth looking at the DNA, even though the epigenetic layer can actually alter a lot of that as well.
I don't want to ruffle the feathers of some of my friends that are CEOs of some of these companies, but and it's something I use personally, even for myself and so forth. I want to understand certain pathways in my body that need to be strengthened from a nutritional standpoint, et cetera. Just so, for example, the fact that I'm estrogen dominant is something that I need to know, and yeah, the epigenome can help me with that, et cetera. But also, okay, knowing that, I give it, say in the totality of my health program, I give it about a 10% strength in the whole thing. Just again, because of my faith in the epigenome. And one thing, for example, you hear all the time, oh, person got cancer. Well, bad luck. No. 1 in 10 cancers is actually like genetic. Like when you have like a familial adenomatosis polyposis, an HNPCC gene, like, okay, all right, that's, big deal. But a lot of these cancers are responsive, the genes are responsive to environmental, turning them on and turning them off, the expression of the gene. I personally have a bad gene for my heart. It's called MYBPC3. I was born with it. It's there. Doesn't mean I'm going to wake it up, right? I'm going to live a lifestyle not to wake up that gene, and it is a little dicey. Some people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to know all this, et cetera. But then if you have faith in the epigenome,
right,
then it's like, okay, I know I can get to work on this and use it as a motivator. And that's where the mindset part comes in. Use it as a motivator to adjust, effectively the rest of your life.
One of the things that I've kind of struggled with understanding what I actually believe about it is there's some people who there's a certain breast cancer gene. And I don't exactly know what it is, but I know that there's certain people with that gene who decide to actually remove their breast tissue in advance of actually anything bad happening. So in that instance, it seems to me like, man, I'm not sure that that's the right choice. I guess because of my belief in the epigenome and like, yeah, you may have that and it may have like a proclivity to express in a certain way, but you have far more agency over that than you realize.
So I don't know. I'm not going to quote here off the top of my head. And everything I'm saying is backed by a ton of studies and so forth. And everything I've said in this podcast is coming off of.
Yeah, we'll do our best to put a lot of it in the show notes.
We'll for sure. I insist on doing that because that's how it should be when you're discussing medicine, right? But there's studies showing how for example, the BRCA1, BRCA2 genes, I believe those are the genes you're speaking of. They're extremely sensitive to diindolylmethane, which is found in cruciferous vegetables, right? And that's where sprouting and so forth. These people that have that issue, that have the BRCA gene, and it's powerful. If I'm not mistaken, it's around 80% reduction in the expression of that gene. It's ridiculous. It's like, wait a minute, something as simple as DIM, right? Diindolylmethane, which is found in broccolis. Yes, there's a lot of studies in regards to this, and I can pull these studies up. I'm not going to quote. I don't want to say anything wrong here, but I'll throw them up. I'll throw it at you guys so you guys can connect it to the podcast here.
So you're saying that and
that's manipulating the epigenome again,
right? So that's one of the defenses. If you do have one of these gene expressions, having high levels of diindolylmethane will actually help you, help prevent you from expressing that.
Absolutely, you should be on a protocol like that. Like when the cardiologist that I worked with and saw that I had this MYBPC3 gene thing, he's like, oh, there you go. And you're going to have this and this and this. Wanted to put me on medications. I'm like, no. And I, obviously the conversation didn't go too far with him. I know other cardiologists are very open-minded to this, but I said, no, I'm not going to wake up this gene. I'm going to, number one, intention and thought,
Yep.
And, by the grace of God, I'm going to keep this gene dormant, and I'm going to do my part to live a life to not have this, to develop, in this case, it develops cardiomyopathy, basically,
Right.
big heart. And as you know, I train like a dog. I feel great.
Yep.
My New Year's resolution was actually training with Cyborg's pro team in jiu-jitsu. So that's like,
I mean, you got a Band-Aid over your nipple there. It looks like somebody ripped it off.
Oh yeah, I got it. You actually caught that. There you go. I got a cut there. Actually, it wouldn't stop bleeding.
Yeah. So I mean, I actually think that also, just to speak on that for a minute as well, I have an organization called Fit for Service where we bring people through, of all genders through transformation. And we have there's another organization that I deeply respect that I'm friends with called Sacred Sons. And they do the same thing, but just for men. And in their men's programs, I haven't attended, but my friend Charles Eisenstein's attended, and a lot of other brothers that I know have attended this. And one of the things they get these men to do is is sacred combat. So they box or they wrestle or whatever. And a lot of people, like Charles Eisenstein wrote an essay called I Like to Fight. And he tells the story about how he went there, and he's never really fought in his life, and he gets there and they ask him if he's interested, and they find a well-suited person. He's like, yeah. And they're like, all right, well, why do you want to fight? He's like, well, I was attacked during the whole COVID era, and I wasn't able to fight back, so I want to know that there's really fight in me, and that I wasn't doing that. I was actually doing that for the right reasons, and it wasn't just because I was scared, and I want to know that I can fight. And then he gets in this actual physical confrontation in the sacred combat, and it woke something up and gave him a little trust about who he was as a man. And I don't think it's just important for men. I mean, we have cats that you've probably heard, meowing on this podcast. They're brother and sister. And when they play full out. They go at each other and they give each other hell. And then they stop, and then they'll cuddle, and then they'll lick each other. And it's just kind of like part of, I think, what our birthright is to actually see what we're made of when we put our physicality against another person.
Absolutely.
And if you don't do that, I don't think you actually understand your blueprint as an animal. I think it's really important.
I was telling my wife the other day, and she didn't like this idea too much at first, but I was telling her, I'm going to tell our son that maybe it's a good idea for him to engage in combat at least once a week, as an adulting male, and that's something I try to do. I spar or whatever, more than once a week, but it just, that I believe that's also part of me releasing whatever's in there, not only those periods of mindfulness, et cetera, but this period, like the period where I go back into just like pure, like human, pure raw, pure, like, the animal side inside of me, right? Sex and fight and all that. That's the animal inside of us, right? And I believe I need to be in tune with that too. And that goes back to, the whole kind of the fulcrum of what we were talking about on the podcast is, if you're chemically not right, you're not going to express that human, that animal. That animal dies off, bro. And you feel that, right?
Right.
You feel that dying off. You feel that. And then there's without certain chemicals inside your body, and one that I'd love to touch base on, because I know the world has a big taboo on it. And I honestly believe this chemical is having its renaissance, or this molecule, growth hormone. Growth hormone's another one that I think is something essential in your body. They say it causes cancer. So it's like, wait, hold on. You have two huge chemical interventions in your life: puberty, and you and I will have andropause. Women have menopause, right? So when do you have most cancer? During puberty or during menopause, andropause? Right after menopause, andropause. When do you have the high surges of growth hormone? Right there, during puberty. I'll add another research article that they did on 11,000 meta-analysis on.
And what you're, just to summarize for the listeners who may not know, what he's talking about is the common the common kind of risk that people associate with growth hormone is that it could grow a tumor.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that, in talking to you, you really believe quite the opposite. And that's what you're trying to say is like when the growth hormone is the highest, the body has the least amount of tumors.
Cancer activity.
And really, I think a lot of the medical model misunderstands how important energy is. Like if we have energy, it's why a ketogenic diet or ketones are so valuable, because your body all of a sudden has energy. And then you read a book like Travis Christofferson's Tripping Over the Truth, Otto von Warburg's, metabolic theory of cancer, and understanding how actually if you can wake up the mitochondria, through restricted ketogenic dieting and through hyperbaric oxygen and different aspects like that, you're actually going to be able to not only help, restore and rehabilitate your body instead of trying to fight the cancer. It's like give your body enough energy to restore its health. And it's this whole shift in mindset, but it's like energy is absolutely important. The ability to repair itself. So stem cells and growth hormone and all of that, like energy and repair hormones and all of that is so much more valuable than people think. I feel the truth of that. And more studies are coming out. There's even recent studies that are pointing to restricted ketogenic diets, so putting the body in ketosis, actually helping to heal schizophrenia. My friend Eric Godsey is like wildly obsessed with this new research that's come out. So it's not only physical conditions, but it's actually mental health conditions and ketogenesis is just one way to give your body energy back, to start to rehabilitate your mitochondria, which of course there's lots of other ways to do that. There's peptides, there's a bunch of things, but giving yourself the energy and the repair cascade and all of the raw ingredients to be a fucking thriving human, like that's going to be so effective for your health. Like I used to really be scared of, my uncle had lymphoma. And it was my biggest fucking fear, and I'd feel my glands all the time and I would worry. I watched him, die. My uncle was my hero. He taught me how to serve in tennis. He was one of my heroes. And he taught for the first person to teach me how to shoot a gun. And he was fucking awesome. My mom's brother, Craig Harder, like so much love to Craig. And I watched him die of lymphoma. And it made this deep, deep impact. And he was my uncle. And so I was afraid for a long time, and a lot of my ayahuasca journeys would bring it up.
Wow.
But that fear is just really gone away now that I've started to really trust my body. It used to feel like it was a random thing that could just happen. Craig he was always playing tennis. He was so good, but, and it's always difficult to ascribe causality to it. But what I do know is that the full energetic system thriving and expressing in every way, when all of the energy centers are pulsing and alive, like I fundamentally just do not believe that is a part of the possibility of my timeline anymore.
Absolutely.
And it's really so much more about energy and so much more about, and I mean that from a like mitochondria standpoint and also from a metaphysical standpoint, energy, which actually are very related. I think we try to one of my teachers is shaman maestro Hamilton Souther, and one of this classic famous lines when he's talking about doing work with plant medicines is energy levels matter. Like you could think you're going into a ceremony, it's so tough and you're being attacked by all of these cosmic negative forces. And maybe you're just tired. And then you like go into the same thing and you're like, it was amazing. And I was dancing on the lap of God and Shiva was there and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, well, your energy was different. Like energy levels in integration and in ceremony really matter. And I think it matters in health so much. And that's, again, just buttressing and supporting this idea of holistic energetic health.
Absolutely. And then you just mentioned a word that I love, mitochondria too, which is another system. We spoke about the thymus gland, a little bit about adrenals, but the mitochondria, it's so important. It's the little battery of the cell. And 10% of your body weight is mitochondria. And 25% of the weight of your heart is mitochondria.
Wow.
Think about that for a second. It's like so powerful, so deep. That little organelle, right? As we say, a little organelle is so important for your health, and they're dying off as we're aging as well. And you mentioned lymphoma, the cancer, whatever. Those are mitochondrial diseases. They start by attacking the mitochondria, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also work that we're doing, with our clients and so forth, to reestablish those mitochondrial pathways and thus help with longevity, right? Because like our main thing, or one of my main goals, or actually the main goal at Biohacks, is what I say, to get our clients to celebrate a negative birthday. And what is a negative birthday? It's to be able to show the person, hey, effectively, we've, like that trim trial. Oh, by the way, do you know the drugs they used on trim trial to get that to get it the age to rewind? Recombinant growth hormone, DHEA, and metformin. I'm not a fan of metformin. You can use other things, but the growth hormone was
Wow.
was
Interesting.
one of them. Yeah. So the idea is to get the person to celebrate this negative birthday, which is to show them, hey, look, you've been doing this program for 6 months, a year, et cetera. And look, your epigenome is slowing down. Like last year, I was aging at a rate of 85% of the year, instead of aging like 100% of the year. I was aging at 85% of the year. This year, I really took some strong initiatives, et cetera. I'm at 75%. The record in the country right now is at 60%. I'm in the top 10 percentile, but I want to slow it down even more. But now is where you really got to start getting really meticulous.
Yeah, I was talking to Christian Angermayer about this kind of concept. And really, he believes that it's possible that instead of getting to 60%, we actually, is the moment we get to negative 1%, we're functionally immortal.
Exactly.
So like if you can actually live a year, but actually regress by a year and a day, then at that point, you're actually like functionally immortal, which is a fucking crazy thought. But what you're saying is we're already, some people, outliers, are already down to 60%.
So what you're talking about, I think, is called the human escape velocity. So basically us being the last generation to die or the first one to live forever. And that's right there. Yeah. And that's what
it's so science fiction, right? But it's lots of things that are real science fiction are starting to become a little bit closer to reality.
Exactly. So, and that I believe I'm saying it right. Human escape velocity is a concept that, I've always been like, nah. And now I'm like, okay, starting to see these things like really manifest itself.
And I think it's gonna, it seems like, I think everybody's always looking for the magic bullet. We discovered the one thing. And really talking to, Christian Angermayer, the way that he's looking at it, and he's of course biotech investor, like the way he's looking at it is it's like, no, it's going to be the aggregate of a million little things.
Absolutely.
Instead of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, it's going to be life by by 1,000 paper blessings, or whatever. It's like lots of little things: lifestyle changes, emotional changes, energetic changes, physical changes, peptide changes, hormone changes, different, and then some really awesome new shit that we haven't discovered. Obviously, if we discovered it, we'd be there already, but it's a combination of a lot of different things.
Can I add to that? So look, I'm just going to let me see if I could do this in 60 seconds. The essence of what I believe in all my years of studying, biology, medicine, all that stuff. There's 4 pillars of all disease, 4 pillars, disease and aging, right? There's 10,000 monogenic diseases documented right now, meaning a disease connected to one gene. I mean, there's more than that, but that's a lot of disease. But the pillar of all these diseases is inflammation, oxidation, free radicals all over the place, glycation, and methylation, the process of turning on and turning off certain genes. Again, getting back into that epigenome conversation. Now, to control that, this is what I do for my life, and I help manage the life of many of our clients, et cetera, at our company. But there they go, playing all full out.
That's what I'm saying. They're living the life of a cat. I have conversations with Vylana. I'm like, listen, like our cats need an initiation. I think they're missing out on the best evolution of their cat soul if they don't have the ability to fight some strangers, we've already taken away their ability to mate with strangers. so we got to give them something. So they got to be able to fight and hunt, and she's not so keen on the fighting and hunting program for our young cat children. But nonetheless, it's like it's the same kind of philosophy I have with them. It's like, yeah, fucking be a cat. Like, that's important.
Yeah,
you got to do that. And that's why animals in the zoo are so sick. They're so, like, you see a fucking tiger
or maybe
at the
kids,
MGM.
Maybe our kids in our school system.
Exactly. We're like kids. Animals in a zoo, like where we're not, where they start doing crazy things, grinding their teeth or grinding their horns and like showing all of these signs of what we would call neuroses or mental health disorders. The orcas at SeaWorld, it's like, they're showing all of the signs of mental health disorders. We just can't talk to them about it.
Right.
But they're showing all of the signs. And of course, our society is showing all of these signs of mental health disorders. And that's why it is so important to train jujitsu or go to a event like Sacred Sons. And I think, we might do an event with them as well. Find some way to start being more like the cats, like find somebody to wrestle with and tangle with. And of course, sexuality can be an aspect of that, but all too often it's too transactional and too much about the moves that you're making and what you're doing. And are you generating a climax? And we get to the whole, it's not just like monkeys in there back in the garden making love again. It's like finding out like, what does the animal really want? Like, what would make it thrive?
And I think us being able to connect with the universe, our maker, the earth itself, and now that's why you see certain philosophies like grounding, something as simple as like, walking barefoot on the dirt. It's like, no, man, that's that's basic stuff.
Yeah, no shit.
It's like, or even like mud therapies and so forth. I'm like, you need that, you need that to be able to again, get in touch with that animal inside of you, which ultimately promotes health.
Yeah.
And
that was epic timing, by the way. You said that animal inside you, and then Cyrano just bolted across.
There you go. We rehearsed that. You didn't know that.
Good job, Cyrano. I'll give you a cat biscuit later.
But ultimately, it's like the gentleman you were just quoting a few moments ago about us living forever.
Yeah,
it's a culmination of things, and I think it's a little bit of what I believe. Like what we do is going back to the grand design, to how you were designed to operate, but using now technologies that we have today to get us there.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of these biotech innovations, I really believe can get us there. And I don't know that we're going to be playing God by controlling the aging process. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if we will get there, but I do see with some of my colleagues, et cetera, huge initiatives. I got in this because, I want to live longer and perform at the highest level possible on a day-to-day basis, and what do I need to do to my body to get my body there? And that's what I was telling you before, the philosophy is to remove toxicity, replenish what's missing, re-inoculate the gut flora, recover, which we don't recover. 30% of the United States suffers with insomnia, and then ultimately to re-exist. That's like my
and necessary for that is dropping inflammation down to the floor. Inflammation is I think that's why people like the Petersons, Jordan and Michaela, they went on a carnivore diet. Michaela's even more strict on the lion diet, and it's a super low inflammation diet. And so many of the challenges they were facing, and energetically, psychically, everything, and they tell this story. I'm not going to retell their whole story, but what is it? Is it like the meat has some magical thing? No, well, it does, but it's the way that diet interacts with the gut and prevents inflammation, those pro-inflammatory cytokines from a leaky gut, from a lot of the different foods that we eat that are not the right foods to eat. It's just really a super low inflammation program. And that changes the whole mentality. I mean, inflammation and depression are virtually indistinguishable when you start to measure those two things. There's they have very similar effects. When you're inflamed, you're also like tired and having depressive thoughts. And there's lots of correlative studies showing the correlation between inflammation and depression.
No, it's without a doubt. It's all connected, and when you go into, like I said, those 4 pillars of aging and disease: submethylation, oxidation, glycation, inflammation. It's like, wait, you didn't say anything on that I would connect to on the psychiatric side. No, no, no. Those are all playing a role, and inflammation's huge, right? And then ultimately, for the person to be the best expression of themselves, right? I think those pillars have to be controlled, and through multiple interventions, through multiple, hormone balance and mindfulness, et cetera. And then ultimately, that's when, for fertility, you start to see the body be able to receive and hold a child, which that's another big problem nowadays. Is people can get pregnant, but they can't. Lots of times women can't hold the child. Or you start to see the person, hey, beat those longevity parameters and have a better lifespan and health span, right? When all those parameters are under control, you know?
So let's talk about, one of the things we made it to micronutrients. You're about to go into peptides. So I want to go back and open that back up, because this is something there's seemingly a new peptide that comes out fucking every week, right? Like, so first of all, what is a peptide? And then talk about some of your favorites.
I've had people come up to me and it's like, oh, you're the peptide guy. I'm like, oh. Because I love peptides. So not the peptide guy, but sure, you can call me that.
You're the peptide guy.
I know, I'm like,
that's the name of the podcast.
I know.
1 hour with the peptide guy.
Hey, that might work. But no, I definitely think peptides are the future. So what is a peptide? It's basically a baby protein. You got a big protein? You got a baby protein. So what's the difference between a big protein and baby protein? I'm putting it in layman's terms, right? So anything less than 40 amino acids long. So you have your amino acids like valine, leucine, glycine, all these little amino acids. Anything 40, less than 40 is a peptide. Small little protein. Small little protein. So that's what a peptide is by definition. And they're endogenous. They live inside of you. So you have wonderful peptides like DSIP, delta sleep-inducing peptide.
So basically, the amino acids, the protein, converts into amino acids, big amino acids, and then also converts into very specific smaller amino acid chains called peptides.
Exactly.
And those smaller chains, in their particular combination, have a particular function, just like the big amino acids do. Like they have their own particular
like collagen,
function.
For example.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge. Growth hormone, 191 amino acids, huge. It's not a peptide.
Right. So the big amino acids have their function, but then these peptides have been discovered as these smaller little combinations, these little keys that do more specific tasks than maybe the big ones like carnitine for muscles or glutamine for, whatever. Glutamine does a bunch of shit and for your gut and for everything. But the big amino acids and then these smaller peptides. And then I guess at some point, people just discovered like, hey, there's these little smaller amino acids that are endogenous. Our body produces them anyways. We have some with us. So our body knows what it is and knows how to use it. We're just giving more of it. So it's almost like a new micronutrient category in a way.
Right. Yeah. So they would be a little bit bigger than the micronutrients, but yeah, you're right there. It's like kind of the macros to the micros. That I think would be a great analogy.
It's like an adjacent category, but you can almost look at it that way. But they're just even more targeted, perhaps, because a lot of micronutrients have so many different functions. But these peptides seem like they're very
super targeted,
specific, very targeted, like arrows.
Yep, exactly. They know where they fit and they know where they're going, So basically this is also, before we couldn't see these little molecules, right? They're so tiny. Like I just mentioned, DSIP, I think it's 7 amino acids long. It's tiny. Like I said, growth hormone, big. Oh, and let's talk about the first peptide discovered. Just thinking here if it was the first discovered or the first one to put in use, but one of the first ones to be out there, let's say, insulin. Everybody's like, oh, I know that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, back in 1930s, 1940s. So insulin was one, it's a peptide. That was one of the first ones. Kind of revolutionized the world, huh?
Yeah.
So that's one of the first, to give you guys a good example of one of the first peptides. But then as time has moved on, we've been able to find other peptides. Like, let's quote a really popular one. Joe Rogan went on a podcast and talked about BPC 157 and gained a lot of popularity, which is a gut peptide. It's 15 amino acids long. So you see, the numbers are pretty small. They never go over though that 40 mark. So, and that BPC 157, for example, it lives in the gut. It helps to actually close the leaky gut, let's say, the intestinal permeability. So when you have breaks in the cytoskeleton, not the cytoskeleton, the scaffolding proteins. But
so, all right, so let's just give people one quick kind of protocol idea, which is basically glutamine is great also for your gut walls and your gut lining. Possibly because glutamine actually converts to BPC 157. It doesn't.
No.
Okay. That would be cool if it did. But anyways, glutamine good for the gut. So that's a big amino acid, over 40. And then there's BPC 157, which is a more targeted function. And that's important because if you improve your intestinal permeability so that those bigger particles are not escaping into the blood, causing that inflammatory response, the pro-inflammatory cytokines that make you tired, make you fatigued, make you irritable, depressed, all of that. If you can shore up your gut with just that strategy, and of course the food you eat is very fucking important. And again, more extreme diets like the Peterson's diets, the carnivore and the lion and keto diet, different low inflammation.
That's many leaky gut, like
many different diet interventions that are also very important, fasting, etc. But these are two things that, like a big amino acid and a small amino acid. All right, you can start to do some real work, and I've noticed a significant improvement in using glutamine, a glutamine supplement, and the BPC 157 that I've gotten from Biohax as well, and it's like, all right, my gut is feeling like less gas, less inflammation when I eat. I used to always get so fucking tired after I eat. And it's like, how much tobacco and coffee can I have after a meal so I don't completely crash? And now I'm making better diet choices, but also it just feels like, all right, my stomach's like operating in the right way and I'm not producing this postprandial inflammatory response.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned coffee. I gave up coffee 5-6 months ago. I think I drank enough coffee for like 3 lifetimes. And so I was really scared because I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen after I eat and so forth. And then I tweaked my protocol and cruising for real, like feel great. But I couldn't do it if we weren't doing things like, both you and I are doing these interventions to, all right, optimize my body, get Marcos out of there. Everybody calls me Dr. D. My real name's Marcos, right? So I call myself by my real name now. But if I couldn't get like me out of there, to my true energy, right? So, but going back on giving people a protocol, the first thing I would say is, man, if you can't perhaps maybe do tests to understand, like I have a huge issue with gluten, right? There were some things your stomach didn't like either, right? So number one is avoiding those things. But then there's awesome peptides like BPC 157, KPV, lorazepatide, the really, really good peptides for the gut. And they're endogenous. Oh, KPV is tiny, 3 amino acids. That one's a baby little peptide, right? Which also helps a lot with, for example, psoriasis. The heck, what does that have to do? Well, the skin and the gut go together, right? Lots of times, and this is what I think is crazy in dermatology. Like, I think it's absolutely nuts. Medicine's so compartmentalized, right? You almost are so specialized. You're the specialist of the specialist that you don't know almost nothing of the whole picture, right? But the gut and the skin are intimately related, So when looking at like a good peptide protocol for the gut, I always tell people, watch what you're putting in, don't irritate the body more so. And then there's like glutamine's great amino acid for the gut, but also then maybe consider, some peptides, et cetera. Peptides are wonderful. And, just be careful with the quality of peptides, because one thing I will kind of alert our listeners to, your body knows, hey, for example, growth hormone, amino acid this one, amino acid this, and valine and leucine and lysine and all, right? But hey, you don't belong here. This is the wrong one. There's a molecule that switched. He knows that's not the right thing. So all of a sudden, stop the whole thing and bring in the immune system, bring in the natural killer cells, so you don't want to put peptides or molecules
that are
inside your body that are not exactly bioidentical. Then that's how you start cancers and autoimmune disease, et cetera. When your body starts attacking things to get these things out of the body. I have a very strong.
So don't go to your back alley peptide dealer.
No,
it's basically what.
Jesus, no.
If someone's slinging peptides out of their garage, like that's probably not the move.
No, and the thing is, you want to understand exactly what you're putting in your body, because I have a very strong philosophy that in medical school, they teach us something called immune tolerance. Immune tolerance meaning, the name says it, your immune system can tolerate enough of this insult. Bullshit. No. There is to a certain extent, but the immune system should not be dealing with things it doesn't know what it is. We've spoken a lot about almost like Neanderthals, going back into the animal behavior in ancient times, right? What they were picking off the trees, et cetera, like our bodies know what these things are, know what broccoli's made out of. I mean, we were just talking about how the BRCA gene is sensitive to diethylmethane in cruciferous vegetables, right? So there's things that the resources are put around in our environment. Now, when the body doesn't recognize those things, I personally believe that's when you wake up the immune system, and then you can start autoimmune disease and health aberrations like a cancer. So it's very important when using peptides and things like that to use proper peptides that are properly made, not made haphazardly. And it's very different than making, for example, any steroidal type chemicals or whatever. Like all the way from a vitamin D, which is a steroid molecule, to progesterone, to those are actually simpler to make underground than it is actually. Peptide proteins are hard to make, very, very hard to make.
And that's the unfortunate part about peptides, is that they do come with a cost. They're not covered by insurance. And you have to be willing to go out of pocket to have these advantages, and consider yourself very blessed if you can actually afford it, and hopefully, with economy of scale and technology getting better, hopefully the manufacturing of these peptides will actually become cheaper and cheaper.
And hopefully the FDA giving us thumbs up someday for it.
Yeah, I mean, and then that's a whole process in and of itself, of course, because then you have to show that it's treating a disease, and it's an interesting emergent field. But if you had to say, like, all right, what are so we talked about BPC 157. You mentioned Delta Sleep induction
DSIP, Delta Sleep Inducing Peptide.
Yeah.
Which raises testosterone too.
Which changes your sleep architecture, helps you get into deeper sleep. And the deeper sleep is where you actually produce testosterone, assuming that your factory is open for business. Because I can be getting the deepest sleep in the world, circa 2021, and it doesn't matter. I'm not producing any testosterone. But so that's an interesting one. And then, there's some other ones that we've tried. One of the ones that I actually thought worked really well was MOTS-C, MOTS-C, but it fucking works really good. It's great for energy, but I get like a little bruise everywhere I put it, like a little knot. It's like the hardest one to inject.
So I sent you a little video on, perhaps another mode of administration. I think that'll work out for you. But if we do that, by choosing.
Is it in the butt?
No, it can go in your thigh.
It's not a suppository. All right.
No.
All right.
But the MOTS-C, which stands for mitochondrial C peptide, it does amazing things. Now, one thing it does, it upregulates GLUT4, which is the receptor for sugar in the muscle. So if somebody's like insulin resistant, it helps them to become more insulin sensitive. Oh, so wait, you're saying it helps in mechanisms against diabetes? Yeah, it does. Wonderful. Increases what it does, it increases mitochondrial biogenesis. So it makes you have more mitochondria. Like I told you, 10% of our body weight is mitochondria, and it's declining as we're aging. It increases the ability for your body to produce more.
I want to be thick in mitochondria.
And let's go.
Is mitochondria thick? I want to get 13%. Come on, baby. Flex my mitochondria.
No, mitochondria is the jam, bro. Like they do everything. Like I think that's my coolest organelle. Actually,
Oh, you love picking favorites.
I just picked a favorite organelle, right? So inside the cell, my favorite organelle. Got my favorite organ and my favorite organelle, right? Sorry, cytoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
Tough luck. But yeah, and then the Japanese, the longest lived population in the world, the Okinawans.
Blue zone, yeah.
There's a phenotypic and genotypic link between the idea of them having more mitochondrial biogenesis and living longer. So when you take the peptide, basically that's when you're messing with the epigenome. Sorry, you're telling that sequence in your DNA. Okay, the MOTS is telling that sequence in the DNA, hey, go make more freaking mitochondria. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where so you can take a DNA test with any of these companies, right? And some of these, and I know the CEOs of a lot of these companies, or a few of these companies. And like I said, I vouch for them. I use them myself. But just because it says that, I'm not remembering now the name of certain the mitochondrial biogenesis gene. There's a few genes for that. But just because you're lacking in it, or you don't have a proper expression of that gene, doesn't mean you could take the MOTS-c, or you could take the SS31, which is another really freaking awesome peptide, and thus increase the ability for you to produce those mitochondria. Or say you're low on the FOXO3 gene, remember that one, which is the one to remove the zombie or senescent cells from your body. Mm-hmm. You could take the peptide, the FOXO4-DR5, I believe it's called, to allow your body to remove those senescent cells, especially if you're a big stem cell guy, you do stem cell treatments, et cetera. And then later you want to remove some of these senescent cells or these dead cells, zombie cells. You could use the peptide if your body doesn't have the natural ability to remove those. So that's the cool part. Just because you have that DNA blueprint, okay, but then with the peptide, I can really turn on and modulate that signal. That's super cool, bro.
When I was in your office here in Miami, you guys had a chart, and we didn't go over it or anything, but it was a chart. It must have been 30 different peptides that were on like a large like whiteboard. Yeah,
it
was a bunch, and it was just like all of the different things. And so what's interesting, I think the invitation, we could go through probably a lot of other ones, but just understand that there's this emergent field of medicine called peptides, and that actually when you go in, you're going to find something for most things. For most things that you want, whether it's energy or it's weight management or whether it's immune system or gut health or, cognitive, like whatever it is.
Cognitive, there's a bunch.
Whatever it is, there's something that you could dial in. Of course, again, obviously it's a hugely privileged position to be able to afford these peptides. But if you do have that luxury and you want to prioritize that health, so of course, ideally, you can be fit for service so that you can be the best version of yourself to then offer your gift to the world. And that's, I think, the obligation that those of us who have the ability to go acquire peptides like these is to really all right, build yourself up so then you could be of greatest service to the good of all.
Absolutely, man. And again, to bring your body into the resonance it needs to be in. I'm actually wearing a patch on my chest right now. It has some silver particles here, and I'm altering the resonance of my body. I'm testing this out. This is some Italian physicians that came up with this 15 years ago. I had a call with them this morning. This is not out in the market.
I would have figured Italian physicians, it'd be gold.
True. True. They like gold. That's right. But it's altering my electromagnetic field, and thus changing the voltage gated exchange in my cells, etc. I'm testing this thing out. You put it on for 48 hours, and then supposedly my body's going to my HRV lowers. So yeah, I'm going to give you one. You do like the HRV talk. So all that, once you incorporate peptides and so forth, et cetera, to ultimately get the body to be at a peak state, for your mind to be in a peak state, right? Because when you're on, you want to be on. And when you're off, you want to be off. The problem is our Western civilization, kind of the whole world now, for the most part, we take medication to try to stay on. We try to take medication to try to stay off. And it's like we live in this limbo land. No, man, I want to wake up and be like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to no, I'm done. My body, I feel my body naturally shutting off, etc. So when you're able to modulate the resources that your body's lacking, and then when you take it to the next level and use properly peptides to manipulate the epigenome, that's ultimately where I see like, hey, you're starting to have a better human experience, right? And then I'm always looking for the next tweak, man. They sent me the University of Rome.
Of course.
Sent me these things.
Put yourself in the lab, N of one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. See if it works. I think to me, I think there's a lot of. I know that I've asked of myself to do extraordinary things.
Yeah.
And I've been successful. And I spend actually a lot of time like thanking my body for actually allowing me to do everything that I've done. This is my dream life. It really is. Like,
amen.
And if I could really summarize probably the thing that I want to focus on the most, it's just fucking gratitude, man. Like gratitude for everything that's brought me to where I am and all of the stress that I took on and everything that I did, and that my body stood by me, and was there with me and got me through all of it. And I had, some good interventions and some, break glass in case of emergency interventions that are still hanging on. A lot of that having to do with my sleep, because I was revved up at such a high RPM from producing podcasts and book and running a company and handling all of the, different things that I was doing. I was always at such an RPM level that I started to use interventions like benzodiazepines to help me go to sleep and different other things. And that's also part of what we're working on is, all right, let me get my full holistic health ready so that I can wake up feeling energetic, which is already working like really like a lot better. I'm feeling great. Also, of course, giving respect to the ketamine cannabis therapy that I'm doing, which is, I call it therapy. It is a very sacred journey to me as well, but it's both. It's not, it's both therapy and sacred at the same time, allowing me to have that deep rest and putting myself, giving myself the best opportunity of the micronutrients, the macronutrients, the peptides. So the on is going pretty well. And then it's the off that I still need a little help with. And you guys have been great at just showing me some different options that could really, really support that. And I'm confident that while I'm here in Miami, I'm going to be able to transition to a much better supported sleep protocol than what I'm doing and I take like a 5 milligram Valium. I'm just admit it. I'm not proud of it. It's not, I know it's not fucking good, but when the stressful times, when times are hard, that put me to sleep, and I was able to sleep for the past 5 years. So yeah, granted, I understand there's massive problems with that category of pharmaceutical intervention, massive problems, but mad gratitude again to pharma for at least having that option. Maybe it wasn't the best option, but goddamn, did it help me, during this stretch. But now it's run its course. Dude. It's lived its time, and now there's better options, healthier options for the longevity of my life. And then that's what we're working towards.
Brother, and I take that so sacredly that, number one, that's super cool. You talk about that, and you're just such a real dude, bro. So that's super cool. And I take it sacredly too, to like get us through that road, of like, kicking that to the can. And I say us because like I like to take that dive with the person, that I'm working with. Because there are better options, right? And more natural options, and to modulate those GABA pathways, right? That's where that basically that system's working on. But it's what I always tell people, and I think I told you this in the beginning. I'm like, that off button, and even the on button too, to bring the body back to that homeostasis, to that like that Spartan, that that caveman, whatever the heck, like in my head, I think of it that way. I'm like, how was the human meant to function? It takes a minute. It's like weight loss. It's like when you see somebody like lose weight, et cetera, and so forth, the chemistry is changing. And as the chemistry is adopting, I mean, look, your red blood cells, they live for 120 days, right? Sometimes you need all those cells to die. Your gut lining is brand new every 2 weeks. So those cells, those chemical processes, even the neuroplasticity of your brain, those things take time to change. And as they're changing, that's when effectively you start to see improvement and improvement and improvement. And we start to see reversal in epigenetic clock, not reversal, but slowing down. It's wrong to say reversal. Slowing down of epigenetic clocks. And ultimately, I have faith, like we've done successfully multiple times, where we get people's sleep right, we get people's wakefulness right, and that's why I gave up the coffee too, because I'm like, you know what, I want to put my money where my mouth is, because that was the only thing that I was like, still.
And some of it is just having, I've obviously gotten off all my medication that I use to help me sleep, and all other, I don't really use any medication during the day. It's all nighttime stuff. But I do regular ayahuasca sits, and you just cannot mix ayahuasca with pharmaceuticals. Just do not, under any fucking circumstance, do that. It's very dangerous from both a physical, biological level and a psycho-spiritual level. It's extraordinarily dangerous. So I get off, and it's tough, but I do it because I know I have to do it, and I just, because I have to do it, and I'm like committed. I'm going to Costa Rica. Maestro Orlando Chuandama's flying from his village, and I gotta fucking do it. So I just do it. And I've done it, probably 5 times at least, because that's about how many ayahuasca trips I have. And it'll be for a couple weeks, and it'll be a little rocky at the start. And the first night I'll be up and down. It'll feel like maybe 3 or 4, hour to hour and a half naps, throughout the course of a night, where I'm up and down. And then the next day it's a little bit better, and I sleep a little longer, and sleep a little longer. And then every time I'm like, I did it, I'm off. And then one of those nights will come where my mind is just spinning. And I got a podcast in the morning, and a meeting like coming up after that, and it's starting to creep up to 3 a.m. again. And I'm like, fucking A, like if I don't sleep today, I'm not going to be able to be sharp on the podcast. There's hundreds of thousands of people that are going to listen to this podcast. I have to be on my best. I owe it to the people. I got to take this thing. And I don't know if that's me just kind of rationalizing and justifying it, but there is some practicality to it. But it's always been the thing that's got me back on the old broken way. And I really just want to break that for good, and just trust myself that even if we had to do this podcast today and I didn't sleep well last night, like I'll figure it out. I can trust my brain. I can trust my body. It may not be comfortable. So I guess the message is a pep talk to myself to like, have a little more endurance, have a little more Spartan kind of, all right, I'm just going to fucking deal with this, and I'm going to stick to it. And that will. And that's definitely something that's going to be necessary to make the path, because, rolling, tossing, and turning in bed, it's not fun, but you just have to endure it.
And I think like with what we're doing, also my goal, and what I've seen happen plenty of times before, is as your chemistry is improving, all of a sudden, you start to be like, hey, maybe I don't need to take this thing. And it actually becomes easier. And yeah, sure. You've had moments in the past, like, yeah, it's 3 a.m. I got a podcast tomorrow. I got a busy day, etc. What am I going to do? I need a rest. But if you're feeling optimized, kind of like when, got on the testosterone, it's like, whoa, my life 2.0, right?
Mm-hmm.
The testosterone does that kick pretty hard. But as we're optimizing your body, etc., it'll become easier for your body not to need a crutch to stay awake. Or for example, in my DNA, it says I have a high propensity for daytime sleepiness. Super high. That's why I said the coffee thing was so big for me. I was like, damn it. And I could feel it. And then I had insulin resistance years ago, et cetera, where I was just like exhausted out of my mind. I never had a sleep problem, but it was just like, bro, I went to med school, man. I would sit there, I'm like seeing double the lady, professors and so forth. I struggled with. So that was a big thing for me. I'm like, okay, how do I wake the hell up during the day? How do I not yawn during the day? I ask this to clients all the time, like, how many times are you yawning today? I'm like, yawn? Was it supposed to yawn? Yeah, sure. If you're in like this deep parasympathetic state, on a beach, relaxing, out on a boat here in Miami, so whatever. Yeah, sure. It's normal for you to yawn and just relax. But on a work day, when you're in the office and you're like, ugh, no, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And it's, no, it's okay to yawn. No. Oh, it's okay to take naps during the day. No, you're not supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
and you can, if nap's going to help you. I mean, I think Nick Littlehale, I've cited his book. He's kind of one of the sleep experts. I'm actually a fan of naps, but the fact that you can and that you need it is a different thing.
Exactly.
You know,
it's a different story. Like Saturdays are like my unwind day. We usually with family or whatever. Yeah, sometimes you can catch me napping on my wife's lap or something like that. But I'm saying on the, you're on and if I'm doing this podcast with you and I'm thinking about taking a nap right after because I need it.
Right. Yeah, that's what we want. We want to be able to just live the fullest version of our life.
Absolutely.
I mean, life is so spectacular, and you have to put some energy to access it, and you have to have the right mindset to access it. And if you can do that, we're in fucking paradise. It's like this is heaven. If you're able to do that. And yeah, I know there's challenges and I know there's difficult situations for people and there's wars and there's all kinds of hellish states. All of that's granted, but the possibility of what the earth can provide and what our body can access, the tastes, the smells, the scents, the pleasures, everything that's available to us, it's spectacular. And we just need to get ourselves in the state where we can access it.
Absolutely, man. And getting to that state is one of like my main things. It's that state of that's what I always say. It's like when people ask me, what do you do at Biohax? I'm like, performance and longevity, man. That's the main goals. Want to perform at a high state possible and live to the longest I can. I want to die late as young as possible.
Let's go.
Die late as young as possible. That's the motto.
Well, I'm going to keep people posted. This has obviously been the most I've shared about my own medical history. And obviously we have fertility. That's going to be an ongoing theme. We got my sleep. That'll be an ongoing theme.
So cool.
I'm looking forward. There's a peptide called Kisspeptin that I heard is really great for fertility when we're actually trying. We're gonna bring that in. Right now we're just getting the factory reopened. We're in factory reopened, which might be open. So,
don't be
so
surprised.
Surprise!
Oh, I baked the cake. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm waiting for that text message. I really am.
Dang it. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, I just I appreciate both, the availability of all the different, solutions. And of course, my background founding on it, of course, targeted supplementation is something that you've brought some of our formulas through clinical trials. And I know that side, and I don't want to leave that out of the conversation. I'm just bored of talking about it because it's like all I've been talking about is targeted supplementation for a long time. So don't think that I'm like, now that I've sold on it or whatever, I'm like, oh, the supplementation's bullshit and we're on the peptides. No, every fucking day I'm taking you look back at my cabinets there, it's all of the products that we designed it on it because they're fucking amazing. Alpha Brain, Shroom Tech, the whole gamut, right? So I
take Alpha Brain every once in a while too.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. And
it's great.
And even compared to some really strong peptides, like especially for studying, like I'm like, wow, I can actually feel this thing working.
Yeah. Yeah. So just want to put that out there that, we didn't talk about it much again, because I'm fucking bored of talking about it. I wanted to talk to you about other stuff, but that's a huge part of my life. And yeah, just appreciate, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't like we were in the back of the car. Cause there's, other doctors that I know who have peptides and different things. We wouldn't be sitting here now if it wasn't for that conversation we had, not about peptides and not about all the techniques, but about energy and about this kind of holistic picture of how to live in the fullest human expression. And I just, really honor and applaud you for like holding that while it's simultaneously holding all of the medical knowledge that you have. Because I think that's really the future of actually health care.
Amen, man. And thank you for believing in me. Thank you for that conversation. Cause I felt that too. When we had that conversation, it was like the second conversation that night. I felt like I connected with you there too. And I'm like, oh, I know what this guy's about. And, and I resonated with you. And so just, thank you for believing in me and for having me on your podcast most of all, man. I appreciate you, brother. Gratitude.
We're in this journey together. Gratitude.
Amen.
Gratitude.
Amen,
2023, the year of gratitude. Let's go.
Let's go. Thank you, man.
That was awesome, brother. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe, follow me at Aubrey Marcus, check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere, and leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.